maybe we would see something a little bit different that would provoke maybe a different response in us. Well, our subject today that we're hoping you'll feel that way about is Operation Christmas Child. And we are so fortunate today to have our area coordinator, Lori Bell, who I just met a couple of weeks ago, but just a lovely person. And she's going to share with us a lot of stuff that we don't know about Operation Christmas Child. But before she comes, I'd really like to go back and tell you the story of how it started, because this was the opening chapter in a book that Franklin Graham put out about this whole project, and we have it in the library. It covers the 22 years of Operation Christmas Child, but it really almost didn't get started. And I think when we look at the overall journey of this program, that, we just have to see God at work in it. There's just no other way. So Franklin was sitting in his office in about 1993. It was summertime and hot in North Carolina, and he received a phone call. And this was a long-distance call from a man in England named David Cook. Franklin didn't know him, but he was talking to him on the phone, and David was wanting Franklin's help with a project that he had in mind. David was concerned about the conditions of the children that were living in Bosnia. That area of the world was enveloped in war. Children were displaced, they were injured, they were sick, they were homeless, and David really had a burden on his heart to do something for those children. And this kind of got Franklin's attention because he'd been to that corner of the world with Samaritan's Purse, and he'd been to Bosnia himself 3 different times recently. And he'd seen the refugees, he'd seen the full hospitals, he'd seen the families torn apart, and everywhere you looked were the suffering children. Well, David's plan was, he said, Franklin, I want you to help me get some shoe boxes together. Get your wives to empty the shoes out of the boxes, and let's pack these boxes with some items for children, some items of necessity and then some items that would just be fun. And I'd like to see that we could deliver these to Bosnia for these children at Christmas time. And mind you, this is July, so Franklin thought, we had plenty of time for this. And Samaritan's Purse was pretty good and proficient at packing supplies because they packed medical supplies, equipment, food, medicine, all sorts of things. They'd never tackle shoe boxes. And Franklin thought, what in the world would go in a shoe box that would make a difference? But he had such a heart for those children, and he couldn't say no. And so he told David that he would try to get him some shoe boxes. And he thought, well, this is August. It's a long way off till November to try to get these boxes together. Well, November came sooner than he thought. This had slipped his mind. He got the phone call from David saying, Franklin, I was wanting to check up on the status of these boxes. How many do you have? And Franklin says, I'm going to have to check on that, and I'll get right back to you, because at the present time, what he didn't want to tell him was the number was 0. Wouldn't that put you in a panic? Here they're counting on you for several hundred boxes to go to Bosnia for what would become Operation Christmas Child. We've all got people that we can call in a pinch. I have a handful of them, and I know you do too. Well, he got on the phone to a couple of these people. One of the men was on his board of directors, and at the present time was at a church in Charlotte, North Carolina, serving as pastor there. Another one was executive director in their Canadian office. And so he thought, well, I'll get these 2 guys on the job, and surely we can get a couple hundred boxes together in a couple of weeks. And so he called these people, and the preacher's name was Ross Rhodes, and he called and he said, Ross, I need you to do me a favor. And he told him the situation. He says, just pack a box, show it to your people on Sunday morning, and see if in the next couple of weeks we can get enough boxes to send to these people, these poor children in Bosnia. So Ross said he would. Sean in Canada said that he would, and so it was all set. And Franklin was supposed to check back with him in a couple of weeks. Well, before that time elapsed, he got a phone call from Ross. And Ross says, Franklin, he says, when are you going to do something with these boxes? And Franklin says, well, what do you mean? Ross says, we've got boxes everywhere. He says, you've got to come get them. And he says, well, you were able to get a few hundred boxes? And he said, no. We got 11,000. Well, I don't know if we're going to get that response this morning. But can you imagine? And so we got on the phone to Sean in Canada to see if he'd had any response too. And Sean says, oh yeah, we got thousands of boxes. Between the two, in 2 weeks' time, they had collected 28,000 boxes. So the first year in 1993, 28,000 boxes, went to Bosnia. And that was just the beginning. As of last year, 9 different countries are now sending boxes to over 100 different foreign countries. And as of last year, 113 boxes were distributed around the world, had been a total in the 22 years, 113 boxes had been sent. And these boxes aren't just dropped off. These boxes are delivered and put in the hands of the kids and told them in their language, or the best that they can, that Jesus loves them, and this is why these boxes are given. And I thought about this, and years ago, Terry, you would remember, when we had our Experience in God class. What were we challenged to do? To look around and see where God was working and join him there. And I think it's just so obvious, and you'll see this morning as Lori comes and brings an updated version of this. This is just where it started. But goodness knows, from the very beginning, where it almost didn't start, to where it is now, is just a thing only God can do. And I think it's going to just really bless your heart. But as she comes, I want you just to remember one thing. And Franklin had put this in his book, and I thought it was real poignant and makes you really think about this. This all started with one phone call from England to Franklin. It started with one request, help with these boxes for this year, help for those children. And in turn, it went with one shoebox that was presented in front of a church, one church, in this case 2, that were involved with that. But it's just one message about the original Christmas child, Jesus, and how he touches our hearts one at a time. So Lori, if you would come now.
I'll get it. I feel all high-tech here with this microphone. Normally I have a voice that carries, and I don't need a microphone. And I thought last night, I better practice my presentation. So I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, and I started my presentation. And I was doing all this, and I have a little 5-year-old niece who does all this the whole time she's telling you a story. And I thought, oh my word, it's genetic. She got it from me. So if I move around a whole lot and use my hands, that's just how I have to talk. So I so appreciate the opportunity to come and share Operation Christmas Child with you all this morning. And Operation Christmas Child is a ministry under Samaritan's Purse. And Susan asked me to share a little bit about the history of Operation Christmas Child. So Operation Christmas Child is a shoebox gift. And I want you to understand just how important your shoebox gift is. Your shoebox gift is not really just a present to a needy child or a child who is hurting, but your shoebox gift is a tool that helps unlock the doors. It's a tool that is used by local pastors all over the world to be able to get into schools, to be able to get into orphanages, to be able to get into local malls. Anytime you can say, I have a present for your child, you're going to be pretty receptive to come. And that's the way they get the gospel message shared to children all over the world. So I want you to know just how important this shoebox gift is, and that it is the first step in sharing the gospel message. So Operation Christmas Child is the opportunity to send the greatest message in the world to the most receptive group of people in the world, and that is the children. Got this little, I'm really high-tech this morning with my slide presentation here. God is using your shoebox to grow his kingdom. The more shoeboxes that come in, the more children will get to hear the gospel message. And that's why we refer to our shoeboxes as go boxes. They are gospel opportunities. Not all of us can go on a mission trip. I loved seeing the video from the North American Mission Board this morning. My daughter lives in Atlanta, and that's who she works for. So, yeah, you all are supporting her. But we can all pack a shoebox gift. It's a very simple thing to do. And this is exactly what the mission of Operation Christmas Child is. The mission of Operation Christmas Child is to demonstrate God's love in a tangible way to needy children around the world and together with the local church worldwide to share the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Okay. This past year, and I am the area coordinator for we call it South Central Florida. That's Highlands, Hardy, and Glades County. And this past year, we collected over 6,384 shoebox gifts. That's a lot of opportunities to share the gospel. Within the past 5 years, that number has more than doubled. So everybody is starting to get on board, and it's so exciting to see. The Florida-Puerto Rico area collected 507,618 shoeboxes this past year. That's over 500,000 shoebox gifts. 500,000 children who are going to have a chance to hear the gospel message. So last year in our collection, 7,991,643 came from the United States, with a grand total for this past year 10,440,333. That's a lot of shoe boxes, and your shoebox is very, very, very important. This next is a map, and you'll see the green countries with the stars. They are sending countries, and then all the countries that are colored are countries that have received shoe boxes, and their shoebox total is out beside it. Now, we do have a few shoe boxes that are built online that are very controlled. They don't have anything about the gospel in them, and I don't even know what countries they go to. We just get emails that say, be praying for the dark countries shoe boxes are going in. So shoe boxes are and they're just plain white shoe boxes with gifts in them, that missionaries are using them for friendship evangelism. So that is so exciting to know that Operation Christmas Child is a part of sending the gospel into some very, very dark countries. So this coming up year, my team, we got together and we prayed about it. And we decided we were going to set our goal really, really high this year. We are going to set it at 7,500 shoebox gifts. So we so appreciate you all packing shoe boxes and making a difference. Okay, I'd like to talk now a little bit about that journey that shoebox makes. Okay, so it takes a long time for a shoebox to get into the hands of the national leadership team and to over 100 countries, and it takes a lot of hands touching that shoebox. So we're going to talk about the shoebox journey. Okay, it all starts with one person packing a shoebox, and they have an impact on a child in another country. So the receiving countries, this is the sending countries, it's your opportunity to send and know that you will impact the life of a child. Every gift makes a difference. So besides individuals and families packing shoe boxes, we have churches who come together like you all have with your shoebox sisters. We have community groups who pack shoe boxes. We have the 4-H, we have Cub Scouts and Girl Scouts. So they are all collected, and then they are turned into a relay center. And we have a relay center here in Wauchula. It's at New Hope Baptist, and Miss Shirley is our relay center coordinator, and she gets those boxes. And you might think somebody is rooting through your boxes. Nobody touches your boxes. If you happen to have a check laying on top, they'll open the box and stick the check in, but you'll find out later when the shoe boxes are processed. And then Shirley cartons them all, and then she loads them all onto a horse trailer and brings them to Sebring, which is where our collection center is. And from Sebring, it is put onto a semi-truck, and then it is headed to the processing center. And I won't tell you much about the processing center because Shirley is going to come up and share that exciting part of the ministry. But you notice the shoe boxes have already been through a lot of hands. So at the processing center, they are processed and then loaded into cartons and put onto sea containers. Okay, so then the shoebox is then given into the hands of the national leadership team. Now, the national leadership teams are teams of Christians who are trained under Samaritan's Purse. They are volunteers, just like I am, just like my team is, but we've all been trained. Samaritan's Purse does not just turn shoeboxes loose to anybody. They want to know that they are getting into the hands of the children and that they are hearing the gospel message. So the national leadership team is responsible for the shoeboxes, and then they are responsible to find local pastors who are going to have shoebox distributions. And together, they come up with a plan of distribution. So then the local pastors have to take the shoeboxes to where they're going to have a distribution, either to their church or to a school or to an orphanage. So they have very creative ways how they get those cartons of shoeboxes. As you see in the picture, some are on camels, some are being carried, some are being pulled on carts. I've seen videos of them on little canoes. I've seen kids carrying, or people carrying them on cartons on their head, on elephants. But they do get to the child. So it gets into the hands of a child. But that is really not at all where the journey ends. You would think once that child receives that shoebox that that's it. But it's not. That is really only the beginning. And that's what makes this ministry so special to me. We're going to start out talking about a little boy who is at a distribution. And when they are at a distribution, there are going to be songs and skits and puppet shows, any way that that church has come together and feel like they can reach children. And these distributions are all given by the local church, so it's all in their language. So the children not only get a shoebox gift, but they get the greatest gift, which is a little booklet that tells about the plan of salvation. It tells about the creation, the death and burial of Christ and his resurrection. So they are hearing the gospel message, plus they are going to get to take the gospel message home, and that book of the greatest gift is in that child's language. That is why they are not put inside shoeboxes, because they never know where shoeboxes are going to end up. And sometimes shoeboxes that were supposed to go to one country didn't make it. They wouldn't let them through customs, so they'd have to be rerouted somewhere else. So they always have the little booklet separate. Okay, but that's still not where it ends. The exciting thing is, a few years back, I'm thinking it's maybe less than 10 years ago, they thought, well, they're here, these kids are hearing the gospel message, but there's more. They are not being discipled. They are not being trained. So Samaritan's Purse has started a discipleship program, and it is called The Greatest Journey. And this is what is so exciting, is the children get to participate in a 12-week discipleship training program. And let me go back to that also. Not only are the local pastors and stuff trained, and they go through the whole application process just like we do, but the teachers who are teaching the greatest journey have to go through training. So they are indeed teaching the gospel message. So the first 4 weeks of the greatest journey talks about God's greatest gift. It talks about salvation. And the next 4 weeks talk about how to walk with God, how to learn to pray to God. It encourages children to spend every day with God and to grow in their faith. And then the last 4 weeks of the greatest journey, the child is taught how to share their faith with other people. And then at the end of graduation, the child, at the end of the greatest journey, they receive two very treasured items. The first being a gift certificate that says they had completed the greatest journey. And I know as Americans we think, oh, another or another certificate. And when the kids bring them home from school, we kind of shove them in the drawer and kind of forget about them. But these children, this is a very, very big deal to actually feel like they have graduated from somewhere and completed something. So the second item that they get besides the graduation certificate is a New Testament, and that New Testament is in the child's own language. I don't know why this picture is of an English Bible, but it is in their own language. And I do have some samples up here of the greatest journey up front if you'd like to look at them, and the Bible that they would receive. And each of the little booklets that they are given out are all kind of geared towards their country. So their skin coloring might be different. Their pictures might be a little bit more how their landscape looks. They're all bright and colorful in order to get the children's eyes. So this is so exciting because it is like a little spark that is ignited, and it flames into all these children who have become now missionaries in their own countries. Your shoebox gift makes an impact. I want to tell you about a story, and I hear lots of stories since I work with Operation Christmas Child, about a group of kids who had graduated from the greatest journey. This one, I picked this one because it takes place in Tanzania, and it just so happens that I am going to get to go to Tanzania and take part in a shoebox distribution. I am going to get to go see a Greatest Journey class, and I am going to hopefully get to see a Greatest Journey graduation. So I'm very excited about that. I leave the end of May. So a couple years back, a bunch of children had gone to distributions and in different churches, different denominations, and they had completed all their greatest journey, and they kept thinking, what could we do? What could we do to reach our friends with the gospel message? And these kids on their own decided they would come together and form a children's choir. And that choir goes out around to different villages, and they sing and share the gospel message. So I think that is so neat to see that. So your shoebox gift, God uses it to draw children and families to himself. Your shoebox gift is really a gospel opportunity, and you're a part of that. Such a part of that, I heard a story from the lady who runs my relay center in Avon Park. She has a Spanish-speaking church that meets at their church, and their shoebox numbers more than doubled this past year. And she asked the pastor, Why? How did you all do that? I want my church to be able to double their number. And he said, we have a member in our church who received a shoebox as a child. And when she started giving her testimony, that increased the numbers. So it really, your shoebox makes a difference, and you can do your part. And then but I don't want anybody to forget that it all comes back to one shoebox gift packed by you, and it can change the life of a child in another country. And we pack shoeboxes because the Bible says, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey all that I have commanded you. And surely I am with you to the very end of the age. That is why we pack shoeboxes, to build his kingdom. And I want to thank you so much for sharing your faith through your abundance with children all over the world. It really makes a difference. I'm going to have Shirley come up next, Shirley Knight. She is our Relay Center Coordinator and Church Relations here in Wauchula, and she is going to share about going to the processing center. which is very exciting. And then I am going to come back and I will share different things you can put inside a shoebox and then what comes out of a shoebox.
And that's a really hard act to follow. But years ago, back before when teaching was just teaching and teachers were able to tell their children about interesting things and really teach things that they were interested in and things that pertained to them. There was a little boy, and the teacher was teaching about, it was Thanksgiving time, and she was telling about Thanksgiving and the Pilgrims and all that kind of stuff. And this little boy raised his hand and said, "I know a pilgrim." Said, "My Nana is a pilgrim." And that pilgrim was me. I was that Nana. Because I do like to go, and I like to see places. And years ago I had been to Boone, and I really liked the area. It's such a pretty area. So, and that probably was even before Susan was telling about doing the shoeboxes with Franklin Graham and all that. But anyway, I liked the area. So then the shoebox ministry started, and I was very interested in the shoebox ministry, and I packed shoeboxes. But always in the back of my mind, I wanted to go to Boone. I wanted to go to the processing center. So there were a few of us that got together, and we decided we would go. And I was very impressed with the Boone area and the things that I saw at the processing center. And that very first meeting, or that very first trip that we took, made such an impact on me. And I guess that's probably the one that really inspired me to do more. I'm like Susan, and well, in fact, I was at a funeral recently, and Duck said, the older I get, the more emotional I get. So when I get up and try to talk about things like this, it makes you kind of emotional. So, but anyway, when we went the first time, we were privileged to hear this young girl get up, and she told her story. She was a recipient of a shoebox. She was she was in an orphanage in one of the Russian satellites, and I don't even remember now which one it was. But she said she used to look out and she'd see the other children playing, and she would see, that they had candy and they had different stuff like that. She'd never tasted candy before. She'd never had the opportunity to have a piece of candy. She shared her clothes with her toothbrush. She shared her toothbrush with 20 other children. They got a clean set of clothes every 2 weeks. Now, can you imagine wearing the same clothes for 2 weeks, sharing your toothbrush with 20 other children? And I mean, you just can't imagine. And when I started before this, when I was packing shoeboxes, I thought, what child, and I was thinking in terms of our American children, I thought, what child wants a shoebox that has hygiene items in it? Who wants a toothbrush? How many of our children would be happy to get a new toothbrush? Not many. And who would want toothpaste, or who would want to borrow soap and a washcloth? Well, after hearing this young lady give her testimony, it made me realize that other children in other countries don't have the opportunities that ours do. And they're happy to have a shoebox with a little toy in it because they've never had a gift at all before. So during that time, I learned a lot about packing shoeboxes. But every year since then that we've gone back, and we've gone for 4 or 5 different years, and we've always gone to Boone because I like the area. And it is also the home base of Operation Christmas Child. But they have, probably, is it 5 or 6 or 9? Okay. The next goal might be to go to Honolulu. There's one there too, a processing center. But anyway, I enjoy Boone, and that's where we usually go. But the processing center itself is like a big a big warehouse. If you can think about a big Sam's Club or a big supersized Walmart or something like that, it's a big warehouse. The one in Boone is. I haven't been to the others. Lori was able to go to Atlanta and process. But anyway, in Boone, it's like a big warehouse, and it's very efficient. Over the years that we've gone, there's been different people that have gone with me. And so this morning, when I went to Sunday school, I went around to some of these different people that had gone, and I asked them, what impressed you about the processing center? So I got some notes from them. And the thing that impressed me the most was prayer. Everything they do, they pray over. Everything. They have different shifts during the day where the people will come in and they will, work different shifts. Every time they have a shift change, they make you stop whatever you're doing, and they have prayer over the boxes that we're working on. They ask you to put your hand on whatever it is that you're doing, and somebody prays over the boxes and over the work that's being done. So that I guess that's probably one of the things that impressed me the most, was how much prayer goes into these boxes. And so as a result, when these children get those boxes go to the place, to the person that they should go to. And there's been story after story about children that have asked for something and they've gotten it. We had a young man that spoke at one of our meetings, and he told about how that when he was now he works for Operation Christmas Child, or Samaritan's Purse. And he said that when he was a young child in one of the other countries, said that he wanted to go to school so badly, but he couldn't go to school because he didn't have any school supplies. And that's one of the things I'd thought before. What child wants school supplies? That's something you get anyway. You have to have. So who wants school supplies? But this little boy couldn't go to school because he didn't have school supplies. And that year he got his shoebox, and in that box was school supplies. So he was able to go to school. There's a story about the little boy that wanted, and he was very specific about what he wanted. He wanted a blue button-up shirt, kind of like what Miss Lori has on this morning. And I mean, he didn't want just a T-shirt like what most of us put in our shoe boxes. He wanted a button-up shirt, and he wanted it to be blue. Well, as it turned out, when he got his shoe box, he had a button-up blue shirt that was in his shoe boxes. It has to be a God thing. And I think that comes from the prayer that is put in or goes over these shoe boxes that we do. And as different people were talking this morning, when Susan was talking, it made me think about different things that I wanted to say. And as Lori was talking, one of the things that impressed me was that how thankful these people, and we were privileged to be able to be in the motel or the hotel with some of the people that were there for the training that Lori was talking about. And so we were able to talk with them. And they were so thankful that we pack these shoe boxes, that we give. I mean, we give a little shoe box, and it's not really a big deal, Maybe $20 will fill a shoe box and the shipping and everything. But they were so thankful that we give of ourselves and give these shoe boxes to those children in their countries. And I think it was last year, the year before that we were in Boone, there was a group there from these different countries, and they were staying in the same hotel that we were in, and they were there for the training that Lori was talking about that they have to have before they go to give out these shoe boxes. And so far as the Relay Center, I am the coordinator for the Relay Center in our county, and I'm very privileged to say that last year I didn't write down the exact amount, but she told you how many our whole area did. but Hardee County did over 2,200 boxes last year. So those are boxes from you. Those are boxes that you packed. And like she said, the Relay Center, all we do is collect, we count, and we carton. We don't look in the boxes. We don't check to see what's there. But that's different when it gets to the processing center. In the processing center, all of those boxes have to be gone through. There can't be any, there's a list of things, and this is your hand guide. This is the best thing you can do when you're packing a shoebox. If you'll look at it, it tells you things that you can put in the shoebox. It tells you exactly what to do. But down at the bottom, it tells you about dropping it off. But down at the bottom, it says do not include. And those are things that you should not put in those boxes because, like Susan was saying, most of the places where these boxes are going are to war-torn areas. And all those children know would be war. They don't want you to put anything in there that would remind them of war. So it tells you, don't put in those kind of things. Don't put in damaged items or war-related items, such as toy guns or knives or military figures. Last year when I was at the packing center, I was on the line working, and this box came through, and it had the cutest little blanket that was camouflage. And looking at it, I thought, that's such a nice little gift for some little boy. But they had to take it out because it was camouflaged. And that would remind those children of the soldiers and the war and whatever that they experience every day. And so it had to be taken out. Now, if it had been the little pink and whatever color the new girly camouflage is, then it would have been okay. But because it was that standard war-colored camouflage, then it had to be taken out. So a lot of, like I said, we go through the boxes. Anything that is not okay to put in there is taken out. And they have what they call in-kind items or gifting kinds. A lot of companies donate. Maybe they have too many of something. Maybe they have too many shoes that they can't sell. Maybe they have they've ordered too many advertising things like pencils with names on it or fountain pens or whatever, even like those little plastic rings that the children like at different holidays. There were some that had even Halloween things on, and I thought, ooh, I don't know if I wouldn't think that would go in, but it didn't have the, boogery looking things. It had spiders and, things that the kids would enjoy. And then they had Easter rings, and they had, different kind of, just those little plastic rings. And so there were numerous things like that companies will donate because they have an excess of them. And so when those things are taken out of the boxes that are not okay to send, then we have those filler items that we put into the boxes to replace what's been taken out. And the thing that was so important is nothing that's taken out is wasted. The first year we went, I understand that the things that they took out, they made gifts for the soldiers, for the military's families, because many times they're sort of the military families are forgotten and they're not in our country, and so they did little gifts that they gave to the military families. So nothing is wasted. So even if you put it in and, you're not sure about it and it's taken out, it's given to somebody else or it's put to good use. So, but if you'll go by this little sheet, this little flyer, you can put exactly what needs to be in there. Another thing I noticed was, we think, oh, we want to give those children the most we can give them. So we get shoe boxes sometime. They're not really shoe boxes, but they may be the size of this, and they're packed full of stuff. But if you took the shoe boxes like this, you could pack 2 shoe boxes at least this size out of what was in one of these big boxes. That's 2 children. That's 2 gospel opportunities instead of just one. And the it's been mentioned that, it's not fair for some of those children to have so much stuff and another one not have so much. But those children don't care. They don't have anything. They've not had a gift before. Most of them have never had a gift in their life. And so they're happy to get whatever it is that you give them. But I would suggest when you're packing your shoe boxes that you use either these boxes or a box that is similar to this size, instead of thinking, ooh, I want that child to have everything, and give them those great big boxes. But you had a hard time wrapping those. We taped them. After we went through them at the processing center, they were taped, and they were put into the cartons again. They were scanned. They go through a process of the different things that has to be done to them, but they were scanned. If you decided that you wanted to pay online, now you can pay online. You can go online and you can pay for your shoe boxes online. When you do that, you're able to print a sheet. It's not a sheet, but a label, right? The words leave me. You're able to print a label that goes on that box. Well, those labels are scanned separately. And so you're able to follow where your shoebox went when you pay it online. So I did that this year, and I found out that my boxes went to the Congo. So I was, it was exciting to know that where my boxes actually went. But like I said before, when I was talking to the people that have gone through the years with me, I asked them, what impressed you about the operation? And so I had several different thoughts that they came up with. One of the people said they never thought about how many countries were impacted by the shoe boxes that we packed, because they go to so many different places. Another one was talking about the willingness of the people that were there. Now you're meeting with hundreds of people in this processing center. They're all there for the same reason. They're all there because they want to be. They're not all Baptists. They're not all Presbyterian, or they're not all one denomination. This is a combination of a lot of denominations, and they're all there for the same purpose. They're all there for the same reason. And the atmosphere, they're all glad to be there, and they're all very helpful to help with whatever needs to be done. Another one told me about how impressed they were with the efficiency of everything. You don't have to, the boxes are set up on a line, and they're very efficient. You've got the boxes that have been packed, they're at the end of the row, and somebody brings those to you. And different people go through them to make sure, check out what shouldn't be in there. Then there's, several different people go through it. Then you have to make sure that the labels are on there right, that the labels are marked. A lot of times you put the label on and you don't say whether it's a boy or a girl or a 5-year-old or what age it is. And that's very important, because they're all boxed according to those ages, or they're cartoned according to those ages. So it's really important that you do those things. And there's always somebody there if your box gets low, or if they have containers with these in-kind or these filler items in them, so that you can choose from and put into the boxes. And when that gets low, there's always somebody right there to fill up those boxes. Last year I was thinking, maybe I'm getting too old for this. Maybe I've reached the age that maybe I need to sort of step back. But then I got to Boone, and I worked on, there's a job that everybody can do. They have tables where people sit, and they may roll the pencils, or they may group pencils together and put rubber bands around them as a filler item. They have crayons that they put rubber bands around. They group them together and put rubber bands around. They may take a whole coloring book I mean, if it's a small coloring book, they're going to put the whole coloring book in there. But one year I worked on some coloring books, and they were those giant coloring books that you couldn't just fit into the box. So they would tear out the pages out of that coloring book, and they would put so many, they would select so many that they would put into it, and they would roll them up and put a rubber band around them, and that was a filler item. So that was one of the things I did. But anyway, back to being too old. Last year, I was sitting at the table, and there was this lady there, and I could tell she was older, but I didn't have a clue how old. And she had a little accident. Well, after she had that, she sort of stumbled and fell. Well, after she had the accident, we were talking to her, and we found out that she was 90 years old. 90 years old, and she's still going to the processing center, and she's working. There's something there that she can do. She was out. She sort of had quite a fall and sort of banged herself up. She was out a day. 2 days later, she was back sitting at that table, doing her thing with the shoe boxes. So there's something for everybody to do. And there's so many stories that, that just touch your heart about the shoebox ministry, about these shoe boxes and the impact that they have on the children. And not only the children, but on the families as a whole. And I was looking through on the web yesterday on the Operation Christmas Child website, and I came across this story about this little boy in Fiji. And it said that this lady was telling her story about being there with that child. She was one of the ones that was passing out the boxes, and said all the children were so excited because they were getting the boxes, they were opening the boxes, seeing what was inside. And this one little boy didn't seem very excited, and said she went over and she sat down by him, and she asked him what was wrong, and come to find out the little boy was blind, or almost blind, and said that she encouraged him and said they opened his box and said on top of that box was a magnifying glass. So it's a God thing.
Shirley. Got it. It is a God thing. And that is why at Samaritan's Purse, we ask that when you start to pack your shoebox, that the most important thing you could put in your shoebox is prayer. Before you even pick out if it's going to be a boy or a girl, and I shop year-round, so before you even start putting things in a box, we ask that you pray. You pray for the child who is going to receive that box, that child get exactly what will make a difference in that child's life. I have a few things here, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to totally pack my shoebox, but some of the things you can put in your shoebox are school supplies, pencils, papers, coloring books, crayons, necessity things like cups and wash rags and soaps and toothbrushes, fun things like jump rope.